Can your spouse give your farm estate plan a second bite at the apple? They can if it's structured properly through what's called a limited power of appointment. Watch this video to learn more. Hi, I'm Jason Wagner, the farm lawyer. I work with family farmers every single day to help them pass the farm on to the next generation. In this video, we're talking about a estate planning technique that's called a power of appointment. There are generally two types of powers of appointment. One would be a general power of appointment. The other would be a limited power. With a general power of appointment, what that means is if I have a trust that's established for me, that I can designate where that goes when I'm gone. But unlike with the limited power, using a general power, I can appoint it to anyone I want, even to myself. And that's the critical factor. If I can appoint it to myself or to my estate, and there's no limit on my power of appointment, that means that everything that's in that trust is going to be included in my estate for estate tax purposes. This is very important because when we're valuing an estate, we need to know, what does this person own? If they have a power of appointment, whether they exercise it or not, whatever they have the ability to appoint through that general power of appointment is going to be included in their estate. Now compare that to a limited power of appointment. With a limited power of appointment, I still have the ability to designate where these assets will go when I die, but the critical difference is that it's limited. So oftentimes it will say I can only change who among my descendants this property might go to. Or perhaps I can expand it to their spouses or grandkids or charities, but I can't appoint it to myself. I can't just give it to anyone in the world that I want to. It's a limited power among a limited group of people or potential beneficiaries that are described in this document. So what the heck do we care about this for? Well, as I've mentioned in several other videos, Minnesota has an estate tax exemption that's fairly low. It's $3 million. Family farms, on average, exceed that by $1.5 million on average. Many farms are going to go over that and then some. So when a person dies, we want to protect their Minnesota exemption. We do that by transferring farmland or other assets into a credit shelter trust. And if that credit shelter trust is included in the deceased farmer's revocable trust, it's a formula funded credit shelter trust, or we've directed certain assets to a credit shelter trust, we just can't have a disclaimer trust and have this power of appointment paired with it. So if we have this credit shelter trust that says, hey, when I'm gone, I want you to go ahead, grab as much farmland as you can and other assets, pack that into my credit shelter trust, up to the very dollar amount that's not going to cause estate taxes at that time, and protect that. Protect it from estate taxes. Well, what about the surviving spouse? We need that rental income, or we need that farm income. No problem. That credit shelter trust can still say that the surviving spouse is in charge as trustee, they just don't own it. And it can say that they have the right of income. We typically will give them the right to access principal if they really, really need it, but we don't typically want them to, because the whole point is we put that principal in that trust to protect it from estate taxes so it doesn't get taxed in the surviving spouse's name, but we can, it's there. But what if the trust says, when my spouse and I are both gone, give the farm to my farming son, and farming son is no longer farming, or farming son has an accident and he's on disability, or any number of other things that could occur? Do we still want this farm trust to go that direction? Probably not, or maybe not. Maybe we want to add some more stipulations to it. So what do we do? Well, of course, the surviving spouse, whatever she has in her name, it's a revocable trust. She can update that. She can amend it as needed. But what about the other trusts? This is where the limited power of appointment play. So remember, we don't want a general power of appointment. The whole point of setting up this credit shelter trust was to move these assets into a vehicle that's protected at the second spouse's death, but we still want it to follow the plan. So we've built into it a limited power of appointment. The widow, the surviving spouse, can say, we no longer want this farm to go to farming son or to anyone else. We want this now to go somewhere else. We want this to go to our other children, or we want a portion of it to go to one son and to our other children. Or consider that maybe dad died young or mom died young, and we don't know who's going to be farming. 10, 20 years have passed. Well, now we have a better idea. If we've got a limited power of appointment in there, that gives us an opportunity to now say, yeah, we want the farm to stay in the family. We're going to have it transfer to this farming heir. 20 years ago, we might not have known who that was. Maybe they weren't even farming at that time. So a limited power of appointment gives us the ability to designate where assets should go that are held in trust. It's going to be held by the current beneficiary of the trust. In the typical farm estate planning situation, it's husband and wife, and they'll grant to each other this limited power of appointment as part of the overall revocable trust, credit shelter trust mechanisms that are in there. It's not the only place it can be, but that's where it is commonly. So where else could you see it? Well, let's say mom and dad are both gone. We've now transferred this farmland to a farming heir, but we don't put it in their name directly. We put it into a trust for them. Again, they have access to income and principal, but the underlying asset is not in that person's name for estate tax purposes. So we give them a limited power of appointment so that they can still control the disposition of that asset, but it's not in their name for estate tax purposes. So you will see this fairly commonly. You get into intergenerational planning. It can be a good tool for farm estate planning, especially larger farm estate planning, just because we know that we're going to need that credit shelter trust and we want the ability to keep things fairly flexible. If you don't want that flexibility, that's something to make sure that we're addressing and say that, no, we don't want that power of appointment. Plenty of trusts and estate plans where I have drafted that we've intentionally not had the power of appointment. We've made it very narrow. Only want it to descendants. We don't want to open it up to other people or other beneficiaries. But this limited power of appointment can be a good estate planning tool. It's something you should know about. Even if it's not part of your estate plan now, when you go to update it, you want to think about, do we have a power of appointment? Should we have a power of appointment? Especially if you're a Minnesota resident, the likelihood that you're going to need that credit shelter trust is pretty high if you're a farmer. So do we want to build that flexibility into it? For more information, check out farmlawyer.com, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and follow me on Facebook.